What's up, guys? This is Sam Taggart with the DDD podcast, and I am going solo today. And a lot of you guys, the biggest feedback I get is sometimes you like my Achievement Framework podcast. So I'm going to give you guys a new section, have a new chapter called Actions today. And just really how to prioritize actions, how to really take action. And it's part of the team, or it's part of the chapter Path, or really the how, what's the how, and it goes potential, actions, team, and habits. And we're going to really figure out what the actions are. So if you want to achieve anything in life, sales, business, really go accomplish more, it's really about action and mapping out the action plan. So knock, in the achievement framework, it goes ask, seek, knock, and this is in the chapter seek. Well, action is in the knock chapter, but mapping out your action is in this chapter. And really having to do with planning and execution, things like that, or like looking at how you're going to execute. But before I dive in, I really wanted to appreciate everybody coming to DDC Con. We have over 700 something tickets sold. Our goal is to have about 1,000 to 1,100 and then cap it out. So, a lot of people asking questions. So I figure I'd give a little bit of insight onto what this event's going to look like before we dive into this. So we have about 60 something speakers, and when I to coordinate and to manage and to deal with 60 something speakers is pretty cool. And a lot of these guys are just top tier sales reps. We're going to have a sales panel on, solar, pest control, and roofing. But what's interesting is we have rooms on sales general, we have rooms on, leadership general, we have recruiting, we've got Dmitry Lipinski, Becca Switzer, and Brandon Holmes on recruiting. That's always a big one that everybody wants. So many good things. Hall of Fame this year, we're inducting 3 new members that are huge names in this industry that have been in over 20 years into the Hall of Fame. We have Devin Anderson and Derek Ladino and, a couple people on these CEO panels. So it's just Q&A for CEOs. Devin's a 21-year-old dude, has 40 guys doing millions and millions of dollars a month in solar. You have Derek Ladino, sold their company to Solcius, Martin Pettigrew with Monarch Roofing. They're in multiple states. Adam Champagne, huge, had over 300 reps in roofing. And then you have a software panel with Dan Larkin, who started Solo. You have Zach Kerr at Sales Rabbit and some other really cool people. We have a females panel with Suli, Alex Hall, Jordan. She used to be at Apricot, Kimber Garcia, Lindsay. Some really, really cool female panel with the roofing sales panel. You have Roof Hustler, John Cenac, Adam Benson, Donovan Morgan, TJ McCormack. That panel right there is just lit. Having the Roof Hustler and the Roof Strategist and all these cool people talking about just roofing sales. And that's a powerhouse lineup in and of itself. You have solar sales. You have Oscar Luna, who did 370 solar deals last year. Blake Randall, Matt Crowther. Mike O'Donnell, double Golden Door Award 4 years in a row. But just insane value coming at this. You have Cody Olive, and Drew Hansen doing a workshop. Cody on the pest panel. Coney, Connor Hill. Just so good. Anyway, I don't want to bore you guys, but I'm telling you, if you've not got your ticket to DDC Con, this is going to be the time you're going to want to get it. Prices are going up, and we just keep saying, hey, if you're somebody who wants to invest in yourself and take yourself to another level, this is the best coming out, teaching and really giving a lot of value, let alone our main stage work. Our main stage speakers are phenomenal. Jesse Itzler, Tom Billio, Jim Quick, Cole Hatter, Tim Story. This is a powerhouse lineup. Okay, so I'm gonna dive in. Here we go. Hope you have your seatbelt on, because it's gonna be good. Okay, so actions. Let's think about it. First, you got to start with the end in mind. And a lot of people, when they're mapping out their plan, they can't see the destinations. Now, I caution you with destinations, because once you get to one, and if you haven't thought about the hill you're climbing after, there's like a little lull, like that you get this kind of, oh shoot, now I have to recreate, remanifest, rethink through what the end is. And because we're always thinking about like, okay, these accomplishments, and we're talking about achievement, we got to think of it more like milestones. And we're going to be talking about milestones here in a second. But the first thing is like, okay, how do you establish like your 1 year, where the end in mind, 5 years, where do I need to be, 10 years, where do I need to be? And then you got to work backwards to to figure out what that is. And if you have like a centralized place, meaning some tools, I'm going to talk about this in a second, that is going to help you map out your vision and map out these kind of goals. Like let's say I'm trying to achieve, and I'm going to use this baby romper company that I created. I started a baby romper company with my ex years ago. It was called Eleonora and Co. And I'm going to use this as kind of the analogy throughout this chapter. But basically, if you think about it, like, what is my, is it just to make like a fun side hustle? Is it to go sell this thing? Is it to go start, I don't know, like go get into stores like Nordstrom's? Is it to go, make $1 million? Or is it just to kind of bring in a passive 20 grand a month? What's the end in mind? And I like to use these tools. So I'm going to share a few tools that I've used throughout my career and ones that I've really honed in on. So the first one is the Vibe TV. And guys, I love the Vibe. It's like a $4,000 investment, but I have two of them. So what you do is you can draw on it. Like it's like a digital whiteboard. You can screen mirror your TV up there and then snapshot that and share the Vibe notes. And I use it in presenting. I use it in mapping out my vision. It's a great digital tool to map out, business plans. Next one I use more than anything is Evernote. It's a note-taking tool, but I use this to organize my trainings. And so I've got reading and podcasts and seminars. If I go to anything education where I'm learning something cool, I put it in my Evernote. And I've got that thing categorized out like no other, where, I've got this whole book has been organized in that. And then I used it to write it. I used Airtable, which is like an Excel spreadsheet on steroids. So Airtable, phenomenal. It's like you can put long notes, you can put images, you can put links. Really, really cool organization tool. That's where I map out all my content. I use Google Keep. That's like my on-the-fly code. It's where I put my mantras. It's where I put kind of some of my bigger vision stuff actually lives in my Google Keep of kind of long-term. And then obviously a journal. I'm a pen and paper kind of guy. Then Lucid Chart and mind maps are very effective tools to map out kind of this plus this square to this square to this square, this hierarchy, this like timeline. Those are great tools. And then Google Sheets and Google Slides and Word Doc. Guys, I'm telling you, it's sometimes you just map out a PowerPoint of here's my vision, here's the end in mind. Because this is the biggest problem. When you're trying to work with team and you're trying to map out plans and actions, it's communicating that and enrolling the team and enrolling those that also have to be involved. And something that you can go and edit, and you can have iterations to it. I think a lot of times people don't have the flexibility when they journal something, it sits in their journal, but then it's like, oh shoot, we're adjusting this product, we're adjusting these financial goals, we're adjusting this. And so having some digital tools to kind of give you that flexibility and shareability, and it lives in all of your devices. So if you're on the go and you want to live on, access it from your phone, and you want to access it from a computer, you can do so. And I think a lot of people fail to have a centralized communication piece to their actions, to their plan, to how they're going to accomplish something. And so this isn't a to-do list. I that's a whole nother thing too. You can build out to-do lists and things like that on Airtable and in a to-do list. And Google has some cool action tasks. I use Pronto for tasks. I use my journal for tasks, planner. But this road mapping and really mapping out action plans is very different than a to-do list. And what I'm gonna break this down into kind of 3 categories. As I map out road mapping, and you think of like, how do I map out an action plan? I'm gonna break this down into different categories. The first one is gonna be time frames, lanes, and assignments. And if you think about it, you've got to start asking yourself, like, where do we want to go? Where are we now? And how can we get there? And that's kind of the base of any mapping out action plan. Where do we want to go? Where are we now? And how can we get there? And then you follow those things by asking yourself, why do we need to act? What should we do? And how should we do it? By when? So why do we need to act? So a lot of people are like, well, why are we needing to take these actions? Like really challenging that. And that was kind of in the other chapters. What should we do? How should we do it? And by when? And so this little whole time frame, we're going to start with time frames. And, you know, when I built out this baby romper company, so think of it as like the first thing, as I said, what's now, what's next, and what's later. And the problem is our tendency is we want things now, and it's hard for us to see the big picture to unfold, and we don't properly plan out the order in which things are going to happen, the time frame in which they're going to happen. We'll get fatigued on the journey, hopeless when things don't feel like they're progressing. And it's interesting. I have some employees that it's obvious black and white. You sell a deal, you get paid, you know, you accomplish something right away. Well, some people, if they're in the project management tool, like side of things, customer service, it's hard to see, and you get tired because you're like, man, I don't have clear, like, I'm checking things off a box, or I'm, you know, accomplishing so much. It's harder to keep yourself accountable and the team accountable when they're kind of more vague project-based, or, you know, just kind of like maintenance-based. And so be careful on that. So when you're mapping out actions, is like, how do you put milestones and timeframes around things that are more maintenance-based? So we're going to talk about like milestone mapping. It's just like to determine a fair and reasonable timeline in which these things are going to be done. So if you think of now, next, and later, you can draw 3 lines, and you can put your first things in the bucket of, okay, the first milestones that we need to hit are the now bucket, and then next would be by, let's say, so like when I had an idea in March, so this was back in March 2016, I said, hey, let's get a pattern design by May of 2016. So it's like, let's give ourselves a month or 2 to come up with a pattern design for a baby romper that's going to have a zipper in the crotch. It's going to be trendy. It's going to be good. It's going to be, you know, we're not going to think fabrics. We're just going to think this thing's utility, this function. How do we build a product? And then I said, let's get samples by, you know, from the manufacturers, because we need to send these things to China. They need to, like, we bid it out like 3 or 4 different factories. And I want to get those by July of 2016. And then I want to get the first small inventory by September of 2016 to prove the concept. And then, you know, basically you're kind of mapping out, okay, these are milestones of when I could get these major pieces of my business done. And then you simply prioritize all the little things that kind of go into that, and doing the important things first, where we naturally gravitate to the fun things. And I've had to find myself like, okay, am I willing to just sit down and do the important things first? Because sometimes it's the fun things follow the important things. The fun things is going to shows and selling the stuff. The fun things is going and creative marketing ads that are fun and entertaining, posting on social media for this baby romper company. But the hard things are kind of, okay, let me sit there and negotiate with factories and map out designs and inventory and bag all of, like, you know, packaging. Like, nobody likes sitting there and packaging and coming up with systems to mail out inventory. That's not my genius. Like, that is not fun for me, but it's like, had I not put a system for production and packaging and labeling and putting out, you know, mailing these things out, I would have just crumbled. And so every system, let's talk about lanes. Lanes is kind of the next thing. Every system is perfectly designed to get the result it gets. So if you think of like sales is in a lane, maybe production is in a lane, finance could be in a lane. And, you know, if you map out your action plans based on these 3 lanes, or however many lanes you want to put, you can really see there's kind of prioritization in each lane. And you can do, you know, depending on your competency as a leader, as a business owner, as a sales rep, Depends how many lanes you can juggle. Now, we've all heard that multitasking is not effective. And at the end of the day, if I'm a solopreneur, I'm a young startup, I'm a business owner, like, I'm sorry, I need to figure out how to juggle so many different things, but I can multitask lanes, but not multitask activities at the same time. So it's just doing one thing that's right in front of you through its prioritization in its proper lane, in its due timeline or milestone. And if you can map these three things out, so you have your timeline and milestone, what lane it lives in, and you basically say it's got these buckets, and then the next one would be what is the assignment. And before I get to assignment, we're going to think through these buckets, okay? So mind mapping, or think of a web diagram, would be the easy way to kind of figure out lanes and buckets. And so you're like, okay, I have this project, Baby Romper. I have a bucket that might be design. I have a bucket that is finance. I have a bucket that's sales. I have a bucket that's marketing. I have a bucket that's trade shows. I have a bucket that's customer support, which is, returns, shipping, questions, internet questions, email questions, social media DMs. All of these things can kind of go in their buckets because they all are kind of a piece to, like, how do you run this business? And, but so now we got to move into assignments. So I've organized the lanes, I've organized the buckets, or whatever you want to call them, and you got to figure out who's doing what. So, Jim, who is it? Jim Rohn? Put the right seats in the right, so first you got to get the right people on the bus, then you got the right people in the right seats, then you got to get the right people or the wrong people off the bus, and then you got to figure out where you're taking this bus, right? So it's like, you got to use an organized system to track and manage assignments. So I've got the right people, I've got the team, and we talked about that in the other chapter, but there's tools like Smartsheets, Monday.com, ClickUp, Airtable, Trello, Google Doc, Whiteboard, something that you're going to want to have as your centralized universal piece of assignments. And I think a lot of people, it lives in their head, including me, any entrepreneur or sales or team lead or manager, they put, I use a planner, and so it's like, pen and paper, but when I'm trying to get my team to get on the same page as my planner, that's not effective. But I feel naked without my planner. So it's like, I need my planner because I spend 2 hours every Sunday really mapping everything on my planner. I spend every morning mapping things on my planner. But then it's like, okay, how do I translate that into some teamwork? Because there's all sorts of people on my team that need to know what's going on in my head. So I have to communicate the proper expectations, and how I do that, I use Airtable or I use Pronto, depending on the team. So, most business leaders, they have this idea. If you can put it onto, let's say, a task, and then clearly outline, I need it to look like this, I need it to look like this, I need it to look like this. And I use Loom, which is a great tool to where you say, let me screen record my computer so that it is so clear and it's recorded. And if you have questions, you can go back to this screen recording of exactly what I'm looking for. And sending it to them, they can see if they've watched it, they can comment back, and you can now clearly communicate something. And then the third step is return and report. This part's crucial, at least for my sanity. A lot of times you're like sending out this stuff into the ether with your team and assigning stuff, and then all of a sudden you're like, I hope it got done. And then it's still what it is it's taking, without feedback, where they don't return and report. Then what ends up happening is this kind of energy bandwidth gets taken up in your head. So when you have 20 tasks out there that are to be completed, and then you're wondering, are they getting completed? It's still living, the energetic bandwidth is still living in your head, thinning you out or keeping you spread thin to where you can't accomplish as much as you could be accomplishing if you could focus more your energy bandwidth on your projects and your tasks, not on the tasks that you sent out to people. Full trust of you sending those out, them returning and reporting on progress and completion of those tasks and feedback of those tasks, that you're not having to worry about it until they come and say, ring the bell and say, hey, let's talk about this task now. You're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. I assigned you that. Cool, we're on task, we're on timeline, we're on track. And then having some kind of KPI system to keep people in integrity. That's what I think of KPIs. It's not, there's key performance indicator, but it's also keeping people in integrity, which is important to narrow things down to 2 to 4 key performance indicators where you can hold them accountable to these numbers. So it's like, okay, these are the numbers, if you can hit these non-negotiable, that's what we're going for. Maybe you have a couple mulligans here and there, but it's like, I want to know that you're shooting on the right hoop, you're doing the right task, and you're focused on the right metric to really go drive this mission forward. And if you don't have truth behind the data and the numbers, like I'm actually right now looking for a data architect where that person's literally just going to be fully putting data and graphs together so that we can have good data, good dashboards, good visibility on who's winning and who's losing. Because if you're not keeping score, then it's hard to win. And so you've got to have a good space to keep the data. So there's a couple tools that I've seen or used. You have like big ones like Domo or, your like a lot of different graphing tools out there that put the data together. But there's a free one called Data Studio that you can integrate a lot of your stuff into, and it just graphs it out nicely. You can pull data from your CRM, from your books, from your marketing tools, and go aggregate it and put it into one central place. And that would be helping you really come up with your true tracking of, okay, if I'm going to set out a roadmap and I'm going to set out some action plans, then I need to know that I'm winning or losing. And if you think, like, I even, it's crazy, is in fitness, I just started this new thing called Superhuman. So shout out to John Madsen. I signed up for a fitness coach, and there's an app, and some of you guys might have used this, but it's called MyFitnessPal. And it's like, a lot of this is diet. And so you have to track every little KPI, essentially, of how many macros, of how many carbs, how many proteins, etc. But then it's like, okay, if I'm tracking in my fitness app, where it's called Superhuman app or whatever, is he literally, my fitness coach gives me a workout every day, and it tracks my weight, my rest time, my workouts, and then it shows like my progress, photos, everything in one app. And I look at the seriousness of when I took fitness. It's like, okay, if I didn't have any kind of KPI tracking or accountability to fitness, I'd probably be the same weight, the same outcomes as I am right now. If you think of like, okay, now I want to focus on achieving more in relationships, okay, that's a little bit harder. It's not like accomplish, I lost 10 pounds. It's like accomplish, I did the relationship. It's like there is no milestone. So then it gets a little bit harder when it's more of a lifestyle. It's more of a consistent thing. So maybe that's where I have a thing called the lifestyle design, where I put this cool spreadsheet together that has 7 different tabs at the bottom. I mapped out finance, fitness. I mapped out my whole life. It's pretty dope. If you're interested, hit DM me and I can maybe send you a copy of a template. But one of the tabs is relationships. And so I put, did I go on a date night once a week? Did I have 30 minutes of uninterrupted phone time? Did I, and I'm actually have a dashboard where I'm heading a checkbox that's graphing out how consistent I am with these things. So like my kids, they're not a milestone, they're not an accomplishment. So how do I put an action plan? So I map out time with my kids. I have what's my Queen's Academy. So I have this little thing that I do with my girls where I say, what's the lesson I'm teaching them to become queens? So they're princesses, queens in the making. And like, for example, yesterday I was wearing a shirt that said lions, not sheep. And they're like, what's lions, not sheep? And I was like, well, let me teach you about the sheep and let me teach you about the lions. And then we took a picture. I took them to the farmer's market on Saturday. And it was like, okay, what's the Queen's Academy by doing these intentional things about taking them to a farmer's market and teaching them about small businesses where they're self-sustaining instead of just going to the farmer's market, buying a little cinnamon roll and then going home. It's like, no, these are small little local businesses where, you go to Walmart, they're not small little local businesses. They're just putting their stuff in Walmarts. But these are guys that are like home growing and they're, and just teaching them that. And then I could put a check to say, hey, I did Queen's Academy every day that I was with them. And I actually keep track and I'm keeping score, not to show anybody, not to there is no reason other than so I know that I'm being consistent with my action plan and my things that are important in my life. And that's where people struggle, is they don't track, they don't have any action plan, they just live, and then they drift. And every Sunday I map these things out. And so the action map, the road mapping, is so critical in success in life. So I'm gonna wrap up with that, but that's the section. So if you guys got some value out of this, I hope that you guys leave some reviews on this podcast, because guys, I'm telling you, like, we've had so many good guests. I just dropped Jim Quick's last one, and a lot of other good ones coming. So like, I put a lot of time and energy in this podcast. Maybe my audio quality, I'm doing this on my phone right now in case you didn't notice. Sometimes I don't even care, guys. I hope you have headphones in, or it's in your car and you're listening and you're getting value, because I care about you and I care about the success stories. You know, I get these little things all the time where, DM, guys, send me DMs on stuff that you're getting value out of. Send me DMs on where you're, winning or where you're struggling, and then I can help you even more there. And this one from Colton the other day was, hey man, thanks for connecting. Your content has blessed my life on and off the doors. And when I say off the doors, I hope this is blessing you way more off the doors, because I look at life as a school of hard knocks. My goal is with DDD to become my best self, a better husband, provider, and a kingdom builder. Your videos have picked me up when I'm down and kept me on track. Thank you for your hard work and all that you do. I love hearing these guys. Please send me these when you guys see, when you see a nugget impact your life, or a connection, or a guy that inspired you. And I love hearing the reviews or the private DMs, but I do this for you guys. So thanks so much. And hope you enjoyed the podcast.